All right, so good afternoon and thank you for joining me at this hour. It's time for our usual discussions on leadership. And my name is Shedrack Baku, and I'm looking today at the laws of leadership. About a week ago, I commenced a session on the irrefutable laws or 21 irrefutable laws of leadership as discussed by John C. Maxwell in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And while I began that session, my comments were to the fact that these 21 laws will guide you and will encourage your leadership to grow. Now, you do not necessarily need to master all of the 21 laws to be a good leader. But I can assure you that if you master and if you're able to do that, to master all of the 21 laws of leadership, then you can be sure that you would grow beyond measure. You can be sure that your impact or influence basically will know no bounds. So I welcome you to this session and thank you for agreeing to share your time with me on the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Now, I would truly want to um, go do a recap on some of the laws that I've discussed in time past, and probably that will help us get better understanding of the things that I'm talking about. The first we mentioned was to the fact that the law of the lead, which is that a leader's influence or ability to lead is dependent on how well advanced he is a leader, how well he's developed his leadership ability, how well he has grown concerning his leadership ability. So the first law says that leadership ability is the lead that determines a person's level of effectiveness. That's the first law of leadership. So if you want to do well, if you want to grow more, or if you want to have more impact and influence, then you've got to develop all the abilities of your leadership to the extent that you think you can. The next law is the law of influence, and there we simply said that the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, as quoted by John C. Maxwell or as stated by John C. Maxwell. If you do not have influence, you cannot be a leader. So you may be occupying leadership offices, leadership positions. You may be the CEO, you may be the manager, you may be the principal, you may be the boss. All these do not matter if you do not have influence, because leadership is very well dependent on the level of influence that you have over people. So the second law, the third law, okay, the law of navigation. And here, see that, here we see that. Sorry, I'm having some um, messages dropping on into my laptop. Now, so like I said, the law of navigation is the means by which you're able to navigate around challenges, around troubles, around issues that arise, okay, as you try to grow as a leader. Every one of us faces challenges. I don't know if it's appropriate to share this. I was just discussing with a friend a while ago, and some of the things that I got to know broke me to my bones. And so I keep wondering how that friend has been able to survive all the while with those challenges. Now, it tells me that that friend is a leader and that the friend is able to stand strong even in the face of challenges. Now, every one of us will come across opposition, every one of us will come across challenges, but the law of navigation teaches us that we must be able to navigate our businesses, our organizations, our lives through challenges and obstacles to reach success. The fourth law is the law of process. And there we stated that leadership develops daily and not in a day. Okay? Every good leader you see today went through a process of development. King David, that is being recognized in Israel is been recognized now for more than 8,000 years, went through a process to grow to become the King David that everyone knew him to be. So the law of process says that every one of us must go through a process. We must learn to grow daily to be able to attain and to achieve our leadership status if we want to achieve it. The law of addition simply says that leaders add value by serving others. There are a lot of us who claim to be leaders but are served. That cannot be leadership. Leadership suggests that we get people who we serve. Okay? So your level of influence is dependent on how many people you serve. Your level of influence is dependent on how many people you serve. So the law of influence suggests that our addition depends on the number of people that we serve. The law of solid ground, trust in the foundation of leadership. And the law of solid ground says that we must learn to build trust. And you cannot build trust unless you're a person of integrity. Okay? Unless you are someone who keeps to the rules, unless you are someone who makes promises and do not break them. That's the law of solid ground. The next law is that we discussed the first Wednesday was the law of respect. The law of respect. And we say people naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. You respect people who you seem to think are bigger than you, who you seem to think, or in your estimation, are larger than life or larger than you. Okay, and there are a number of factors that determine that. So the person is a person of integrity, the person is a person of influence, the person has lots of wealth or control or ministers wealth, administers his organizations properly, runs his family well. That person earns your respect. And before you know it, you begin to queue up behind that person being your leader. All right, so that's the seventh law. So on Saturday, last Saturday, we took law number 8, and all the way. Our target was to go all the way to law 15, but we had to stop at law 12 because of network problems, because we had some challenges with our system. Now, so law number 8 was the law of intuition, and we say every person possesses intuition. What is intuition? The ability to resolve, to see problems before they arise, and to solve them before they come your way. Okay? So all of us are intuitive, and we're intuitive in the areas of our strength. In the areas of our strength, that's where we show our intuition. So the law of intuition tells us to take time to develop that intuitive ability or character that is found in us. Now, the essence of all of these laws is for us to know them and to build upon them, to develop them to the fullest. That's what the essence of the laws are. They are not just for head knowledge, they are so we can train ourselves and develop ourselves in those directions. And then the more we develop ourselves, the better persons we become. Okay? So the next is the law of magnetism. And we say there that who you are is who you attract. You do not attract people you wish for. You attract people that are closely related with who you are. Okay? So your personality, your character traits, your mannerism, and so on and so forth will determine the kind of people that are with you. And in that respect, our encouragement is if you want very influential people, then you've got to develop yourself to be very influential also. That's where you attract influential people. Okay? The next is the law of connection. Closely related to the law of magnetism is the law of connection. But here, the issue is the people you connect with are more important, and that you do not connect with people by giving them a hand. You connect with them by touching their hearts first. Why? Because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Every one of us wants to be cared for. Every one of us wants to be touched. But we do not want you to touch our hands first. We want you to touch our hearts. And that way, we can grow together or we can stay connected for life. Okay? The next is the law of the inner cycle. The law of magnetism, the law of connection, the law of the inner cycle are closely linked, except they have some small differences, and those differences are key. Here in the law of inner cycle, a leader's potential is determined by those closest to him. What are the kind of skills that you want to learn? There are people who have the skills of making money. Draw close to them. Make them members of your inner cycle. If that is your aim, if that is your goal. Because no sooner than later you will begin to look like those whom you surround yourself with. It won't be long. All right, so the law of inner cycle says that a leader's potential is determined by those who are closest to him. The next is the law of empowerment, and I think we will commence today's session from this point. Last Saturday, I had a bit of a challenge with the system, and just when I started to talk about law number 12, it collapsed. So I'll continue from this perspective today, and I'm hoping that we'll get a good understanding of the laws and put them to practice as they ought to be put into practice. But by the way, like I've always said, this is an open broadcast, and I don't mind having people follow. I don't mind having people ask questions. I don't mind people interact, okay, with me through this broadcast. So if you're out there listening at a time like this and you have any question you would like to ask, please feel free to ask the question. I'll try as much as possible to respond to them to the best of my ability. And if you are not satisfied, we could go on to also discuss, get others to come share their insights. Now, I'm hoping that in 2 weeks' time, I'll begin to share the screen with some experts, people who can come online and share their experiences with us, so we can gain a wealth of experience from them. Okay, so let me go back to what I was saying before, which is the 12th law, the law of empowerment. Here, the law stipulates that only secure leaders give power to others. And this is true. Why? Because secure leaders spend their time identifying other leaders. And having identified other leaders, they do what? They build them up. And when they build them up, they give them resources to build them, resources to stabilize them. And then they transfer authority and responsibility to such leaders that they have discovered. Now, that should always be the aim and target of every leadership. Empowerment. Because leadership is not about power, but about empowerment. When I first heard this from Miles Monroe, it shook me. I wondered what he meant when he said leadership was not about power, but empowerment. And I have studied and I've come to agree that leadership is actually not about power, but about empowerment. If you want to leave a lasting legacy on earth, then empower people. Your legacy will be dependent on how many people you have empowered while you are yet alive. If you build structures and hoping that these structures will leave your name behind, will empower, or will leave your name in terms of legacy behind, I tell you, you have just wasted your time and energy, and above all, your resources. Why do I say so? A simple flood can wash away every structure that you see standing on earth at the moment. When the flood occurs and washes away the buildings you have built, what would be your legacy? What would you have left behind? What would people think of you? Of course, if there are structures that you have kept behind and the rain washes the structures away, you know that no sooner than later your name will be forgotten on earth. But if you empower people, you equip them, you develop them, you give them resources, you give them authority and responsibility to live life to the fullest, you can be sure that years after you have left, your name will continue to ring a bell in the hearts and minds of people. The reason why Martin Luther King is being celebrated in the United States of America today is because he didn't build any structure and yet empowered people. Developing structure wasn't his strategy. It was the empowerment of people that was his strategy. And having empowered people, today his name can still ring a bell in the lips or on the lips of every Black American in the United States of America and even beyond. Why? Because he empowered people. The name Nelson Mandela will hardly be forgotten. Could call. There are so many people that we could call to understand. There are so many people that we could call and get them to think or get their names basically to ring a bell in our hearts because they dwelt and spent their life empowering people. When you hear religions fighting over a man like Moses, you wonder why. And basically it's because Moses empowered people. When you hear names like Jesus, what did they do other than the fact that they empowered people? So even as a leader today, I encourage you that you must learn to do what? To empower people. Forget about grappling power. Forget about holding on to power. Learn to empower people. That way you leave a lasting name in the world. Law number 13 is the law of the picture. The law of picture says that people do what people say. People do what people see. And this can easily be understood by parents. You tell your children so many things and you end up seeing that they do exactly what you do rather than the things that you say that they should do. I remember when I was about 10 years old and got admission into a secondary school, my dad was addicted to alcohol then, crazily. Now, when I got admission into secondary school, he decided he was going to stop drinking alcohol. And for two reasons. By the way, I just stepped into the room and heard him and my mom talking, and I hid by the corner to hear what they were talking about. And this was what he shared. First, he said, and I don't know how he got it, but he understood it. First, he shared, he said, look, I was going to the secondary school, and because I was at that age where I just entered secondary school, he was sure that in school I would get a lot of influences. And of course, A lot of people will talk about beer, will talk about alcohol, and so on and so forth. And that he didn't want me to drink alcohol because if I did, it would just be because I saw him drinking. It would not be because anyone influenced me. Yes, they would have talked, but I would find a ready excuse to take alcohol only because he took alcohol. Therefore, he was stopping to drink. He was stopping alcohol. The other reason was, of course, that he needed the money that he would use instead of drinking alcohol to do was to pay for my school fee because then the school was quite expensive. Why did my dad do that? Because he realized that people do what people see. If you're a boss in an office and you claim or think you are a leader, and then you come, your work should start at 9, and by 10:30, that's when you're arriving work. I will tell you this, it won't be long. Workers around you will choose to come 10 p.m., 10 a.m. rather. Why? Because they know your timing. You come 10:30 and at 10:30, when they come 10 a.m., they won't be late. People do what people see, not what people say to them. So basically, we must understand that people do what people see. When you tell your children to go in and sleep early and you stay up late, eventually your children will break the rule. They will sleep late also. Even if they go into their room, they won't sleep early, they would just play within the room until they know it's time that daddy has slept, then they will sleep. People do what people see. So law number 13 says, talks about the law of the picture. If you are the MD, the CEO of any organization, I challenge you, start going to work early and see what the response to people's attitude will be. Don't close early, close late and see how soon your organization will follow suit. Why? Because people do exactly what people see. I've always loved this quote from John Maxwell, which says that everything rises and falls from leadership. And I agree. The reason why we talk so much about certain things in certain countries is because their leaders reflect that. In Nigeria, there is so much talk about corruption. And the only reason why we have so much discussion about corruption is because those who have been given the responsibility to run offices in Nigeria, most of them end up as corrupt people. Now, Nigeria is a country of over 200 million people. And I can say that there won't be up to 1,000 people or slightly, let's make a rough estimate of about 100,000 people. I can say that in Nigeria, there are not up to 100,000 people who are very corrupt. Yet, most of us have the tendency to do corrupt things because of the people that are at the helm of affairs. Why? Because people do what people see. I was in a taxi cab some months back, and we approached a traffic light and it showed red. While we were at it, some top government official came, sped past the red traffic light, and as soon as he did that, the cab driver in which I was took off and followed the vehicle. And I said, no, it was wrong for him to do so. And he simply pointed at the vehicle ahead of me. I said, look at that government official. He was with his escort, police escort. He came, he didn't wait for the light, he beat the light and went on. Why didn't I stop him from doing so? And I said, well, I wasn't in a position then in the car to do so, but I encouraged him never to beat traffic lights because of other people. And I taught him this principle that people do what people see, which is that if you don't do what you see those people doing, but you rather stay when the light shows red and you come back and stay before that light, I will tell you that it won't be long, people on the road will copy you. So be a perfect example. Be a perfect example. If you want people with integrity around you, you've got to show integrity. If you want people to Learn to trust each other. Then you've got to, first of all, trust people and let it show. Because people do what people see. If you want to be able to keep to time, or you want people to keep to time concerning appointments, you have got to also learn to keep to time. That way, people will follow suit. People do what people see. That's law number 13. The 14th law is the law of buy-in, closely related to law number 13. Except that law number 14 says that people buy into the leader, then the vision. Just as you cannot separate the leader from his cause, so also you cannot separate the cause from the leader. And because people do not get interested in a vision, they get interested first in people, then you've got to live your life in such a way that you attract people. Many people who have got the idea of vision backward, they believe that if they come with a good enough vision, people will automatically follow them. No. People, first of all, look at you and determine whether they are able to work with you or not. And if they are able to work with you, then they will come close enough to you. And because they come close enough to you, they will buy into your vision. Placing a vision before you, before your character, is like placing the cart before the horse. The horse must always be in front of the cart. Always. So before you roll out a vision, roll out your life first. Live in a way and manner that people will respect and honor you. And at that point, whatever vision you put out, whatever thought you put out, people will follow suit. People will follow you. People don't mind. Why? Because they buy into you first before they buy into your vision. No matter how hard you try, no matter what proposition you bring, if people do not believe in you, they will not follow your vision. They will not surrender to your vision. So the law of buy-in stipulates that people buy into a leader before they buy into his vision. People follow worthy leaders. And because they follow you for being worthy, they have the understanding that your vision is also worthy of being followed. Law number 14, the law of buy-in. Learn to develop yourself, learn to develop your character before you expect people to do what? To follow you or to follow the vision that you have. Let's take a look at law number 15. Law number 15 is the law of victory. This law simply says that leaders find a way for the team to win and to win always. We face crises, we face challenges, we face difficulties in life, but it is the role and responsibility of leaders to do what? To chart a way for victory. There are so many of us who have not expressed or exhibited that quality of wanting to go for victory. Once an opposition arises, we turn our backs and run away from these challenges. Now, that crumbles us, that crushes our leadership. All victorious leaders have one thing in common. They share an unwillingness to accept defeat. I've spoken about this several times. It was Winston Churchill who was leading England during the Second World War. And many of us may know this, but some may not know that England is a small island, it's a tiny island nation. The German nation and German forces were bigger and stronger and better equipped than that of England. But Winston Churchill determined that he wouldn't surrender to Germany. In fact, he told the people of England that he rather died fighting than stood to be slaves to the Germans. And so Winston Churchill rose up with the few English soldiers that he had and challenged the authority or the power of the German soldiers. And before you knew it, he teamed up with other Allied forces. And before you knew it, they had defeated the great and mighty German army. The law of victory. Winston Churchill found a way to gain victory even in the heat of the Second World War. That's what leaders do. Leaders always find a way of victory. Always. They never sit down to cry and lament. They feel hurt, of course. They take responsibility for the losses, but they get very creative in finding solutions out of every problem. They are passionate about getting victory. And the law of victory is what operates in their life, and they suggest that to everybody who listens to them. Everyone who listens to them. There's this quote by Lou Holtz, the former Notre Dame head football coach. He said, "You've got to have great athletes to win. I don't care who the coach is. You can't win without good athletes, but you can lose with them." This is where coaching makes the difference. Of course, you and I know that good coaches take responsibility for teams. If you're a good sport lover, you will see that every time an athlete changes his coach, okay, there seems to be an upsurge. There seems to be a level of growth, because most of the times when athletes outgrow their coaches, they tend to look for other leaders or coaches that are greater than their former coach. And again, if you're a good lover of football, you will notice that every time a football team falters, every time a football team fluctuates, the players are not sacked. It is the coach who is sacked. Why? Because everything rests on the head. Everything rests on the coach. And many a times when coaches are sacked and new coaches brought in, revival comes to the team. Why? Because the law of victory says that every good leader always looks for victory. Always. They are never tired of getting victory, and they are also never tired of defeat. They never surrender to defeat. That's what I mean. They never give up when things are tough. They fight on until they win. That's what the 15th law says to us. The law of victory. Good leaders take responsibility for the success of the team and do what it takes to lead the team to victory. If there's a failure along the line, they take responsibility for the failure. Their major aim is to ensure that there's victory for the team. What does law number 16 say? The law number 16 is the law of the big mo. And the law of the big mo simply says that momentum is a leader's best friend. Momentum. That's what the mo is for. Many times, momentum is the only thing that makes the difference between losing and winning. Momentum. Leaders always try to keep the momentum going. Always. Every good leader, and I believe many out there who are listening to me are very good. You've developed your leadership skills and ability. Every good leader ensures that the momentum works for the team, or they ensure that they raise up the momentum of every team that they work with. When you have momentum on your side, the future always looks bright. Obstacles appear too small, and troubles just seem inconsequential. Inconsequential. Why? Because you have momentum on your side. Again, you may have come across leaders who are many things to many people at the same time. So you have a leader who is so good that he speaks publicly. Okay, he's a public speaker. You have that same leader is an author. That same leader is a host of a TV program or a radio program. That same speaker is a father. That same speaker is a coach. That same speaker is so many things to so many people. Why? Because he has the momentum going for him. Momentum. Everything that comes as a challenge to the leader, he sees it as an opportunity to build and increase his momentum. There are so many people who challenges break them down and they fail to move, they fail to grow, they fail to forge ahead. Okay? But a good leader takes every challenge and every opportunity as a privilege for his or her momentum to grow and grow bigger. And every time that a good leader has momentum, there is nothing that hinders that leader from moving forward. Every organization that has momentum cannot be slowed down. They keep churning out new ideas, new privileges, new opportunities, new devices, new methods, all because they are pursuing victory and momentum is on their side. No wonder, when an NBA team, for example, leads or has momentum going for that team within the basketball season, they just seem to crush everybody. They just seem to crush everybody. When Mike Tyson was the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, he had momentum going for him, so much so that a number of his co-contenders got defeated outside of the ring rather than inside the ring. They simply just came and exhibited what had happened outside the ring. They were so scared of Mike Tyson that by the time they came into the ring, they had already lost the battle. And Tyson knew that. Momentum was on his side. The day that Tyson let down his momentum or slowed down his momentum was the day he started to be defeated. Every good leader has momentum working for him or her. And to create momentum will require someone who has vision, someone who can assemble a good team, someone who can motivate others. You are inspiration to other people. So much so that once you enter a group and there is a challenge and you tend to make a suggestion, everybody seems to turn around to follow your suggestions rather than the suggestions of others who have stayed longer in the group. The law of momentum. That for me, well, again, as stated by John C. Maxwell, is the 16th law of leadership. What is the 17th law of irrefutable laws of leadership? The 17th is the law of priorities. Priorities. This law says leaders understand that activity is not necessarily about accomplishment. Law of priorities is knowing and identifying what the priority of your life is, what the priority of your organization is, what the priority of your family is, and what your priorities are over every issue. So many of us burn energy, burn strength, burn resources, pursuing things that are not priorities to us. You must know that it isn't every activity that you embark on that will yield a result. Therefore, you've got to prioritize your activities. You've got to prioritize your activities. Many years ago, I read this book on the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. And there I learned, okay, and I agree truly, that 80% of our achievements daily are achieved within 20% of our time. 20% of our working time produces 80% of our results. And if that be the case, why don't we just focus on that 20% of time, pour all of our energy, pour all of our strength within that time limit? Many times when we are busy, we just naturally believe that we are achieving. No, it's not true. Achievement does not come by so much work. Achievement comes by prioritizing your work. Prioritize your time. And prioritizing requires leaders to continually think ahead, to know what's important, to see how everything relates to the overall vision. That's what it means to prioritize. You cannot trouble yourself pursuing or trying to please everybody. It won't work. It naturally doesn't work. What are the requirements? What are the returns? What are the rewards if I embark on this journey? Those are the things we should be asking ourselves daily. If I take a step in this direction, what are the likely results that will come my way? You must think ahead of this. And so, the law of priority determines that we must determine what our priorities are in life. And in determining our priorities, we must follow some of these principles or factors that I've spelled out. You must identify when your best time of work is and pour all your energy within that time. My best time of work is 9 p.m. to say 1 a.m. That's my best time of work. And usually, within 3 hours, I would have achieved so much than I have achieved within the last 24 hours. That's how it works for me. So I prioritize that time. I almost keep that time as being sacred. And then I pursue my activities within that time. So law number 17 is the law of priority. The law of priority. Let me thank everybody for joining me. I see a number of comments that are in here, and I'll post them one after the other so that we can all share and thank the people for joining me. Thank you, Asma'u Comfort Usman. It takes a leader to raise a leader. I agree with you entirely. And you must know that every one of us, okay, has been created to lead. Thank you, Sandra Dambaba. Thank you for your comments. I see that you just got the comments rolling in. Thank you. Okay. Obviously, you're following every line as I go through, and thank you for helping me summarize them. Thank you, Nancy Almanjo, for also commenting. Just keep the comments coming in. Keep your thoughts coming in. Keep your ideas coming in. If there are things you even want to see on this broadcast, please just feel free to let me know. If there are suggestions that you're making that you want me to make, or to adjustments you want me to make, please just keep them coming, even as I appreciate you for the time you are spending with us. Thank you, Nancy. Priority is very key to productivity, and I agree with you. Unless you prioritize your life, unless you know the things that are key, unless you know the things that are important to you, I can tell you that you will not be able to live a meaningful life. Okay? You'll not be able to lead a meaningful life. So that's what law number 17 says, is the law of priority. The next is the law of sacrifice. A leader must give up to go up. That's what sacrifice means. You know, there is a common maybe misconception, misperception among people who do not tend to develop the leadership qualities in their life. Okay, they think that leadership is all about position. They think that leadership is about power. They think that leadership is about occupying an office. And I've said here several times that leadership is not any of this. Leadership is about influence. To so many people, they think that a leader's life is about glamour. Beyond the glamour that you see with every leader, there is a huge level of sacrifice that has been let go or that has been made. And the law of sacrifice tells us that a leader must give up to be able to do what? To go up. There are certain things that used to be pleasant, that used to be enjoyable to you in times past. If you must grow, you must learn to abandon them. I love watching TV, but there was a time that television was taking every edge of my productive time. I had to cut down, and I cut down drastically. Even with the lockdown that we just experienced, there were days that I just at best watched TV for maybe an hour or two a day. And I spent most of the time reading books. As a leader, you must practice the law of sacrifice, which is to say that you must learn to sacrifice so many things. What are your priorities in life? Once you determine what your priorities are, then you can determine the things that are not important. And by determining the things that are not important, you can learn to sacrifice those things. One other thing that I used to love then was food. Lots of it. I used to love food. So many of it. Or so much of food. Now, I had to give up the quantity of food I took to be able to maintain my health. And in all sincerity, I meet people that we schooled with. We left the university about 25 years, 26 years ago. All right. I meet a number of them and they look at me and they go, wow, you look so young. You look as young, just nearly as young as you were in the university. And I said, well, glory to God. But the truth is, I put in a lot of sacrifice to be able to even maintain my health. I've got an injury on my knee at the moment. I got that when I was playing football like 4 weeks ago. Okay? So I've been limping a bit and I'm eager and praying that I recuperate soon and go back to the football field to continue training. Now, there are so many things I could do with that time for engaging in sports, but I've had to sacrifice them. So the law of sacrifice suggests that you must learn to make huge sacrifices in your life to be able to go up. Because every leader must give up to be able to go up. Thank you, Peter Genome, for your comments. Thank you, Nansel, again for your comments. Sandra has a question, and I think we can team in answering this question. What would you sacrifice to be able to make influence? My guess is you're thinking of how to increase your influence, and you are hoping that we'll discuss what you can sacrifice to be able to increase your influence. I'll just ask for responses from people who are out there, Nansel, Peter, and others who are with me. Can you please just respond? I have some answers in my head, but I am sure that if you respond, we can make it an interactive session. Again, thank you, Sandra, for the question. So while we're waiting for others to respond, let me say this. There are certain factors that will help build your influence. And the very first factor is that factor of character. Being a person of integrity. You and I are aware how our country has been colored and suggested to be a corrupt society. But those of us who are within know what the truth, what the facts are. But regardless of the fact, you also know that everywhere you go, you tend to find ways suggesting for you to be a person, a corrupt person. There are so many avenues suggesting to you to join the team, the bandwagon. You know, the early days of my secondary school, we usually had this saying, which I know is a popular English saying, if you can't beat them, please join them. Please join them. But you know what? I grew up knowing that that was unnecessary. You cannot. If you cannot beat them, abstain from them. So your first factor to be able to do what? To be able to gain influence is to be a person of integrity. What you say, keep to them. Make promises, only promises that you can fulfill, and fulfill every promise that you make. That's something. That's a huge sacrifice. When you go, that's if you drive and you go before the traffic light and the light turns red, wait, no matter how long. And by the way, in the FCT, the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria, Abuja, I have not seen any traffic light that keeps you for 3 minutes. No traffic light keeps you for 3 minutes. Most of them are lower than 2 minutes. Thank God for the timers on them. And if you cannot wait before the traffic light for 2 minutes, it just shows that you are an impatient person. Another response from Asma Comfort Usman, and I'm sure this is to Sandra Dambaba, one sacrifice that you can make is that sacrifice of time, keeping to time, honoring time, commitments to time. Commitment to time, knowing how to use your time wisely. These are sacrifices that you can make to grow in influence. Peter Denom Stevens sends this out, and it's interesting. He says, sacrifice being popular. That is going with the popular opinions. Once people understand you are different, you can become a reference point. Again, I agree with this. A lot of us chase being popular. A lot of us want to be known for nothing, actually, because people who pursue popularity do not have anything to offer. They do not have. So avoid or sacrifice being popular, and by sacrificing being popular, you become very influential. Some of the persons that are influential in our lives today were not at first popular. They were disliked by so many people, but eventually, by sticking to their rules, by holding on to their tenets, they have grown to become not only popular, but very influential in our society. Again, Peter states you can sacrifice personal comfort for the well-being of your fellowship. I agree. So, Sandra, I'm sure you've gone through this, and you are seeing them as they come in. And I thank everyone. Mansell has this to say. He says, for me, I would say is the idea of servant leadership that in itself will humble you. Okay? So pursue, and I did some teaching about servant leadership just maybe I think 4 weeks ago. Again, go to my Facebook page and scroll through. You will find out this teaching on servant leadership. I've come to realize that there is no better form of leadership than being a servant leader. There's no better form of leadership than being a servant leader. Again, humility is at the core of being a servant leader. You may count that as an oxymoron, which is that how can a servant or how can a leader be a servant, or how can a servant be a leader? But I tell you that being a servant leader would be the best thing that could ever happen to you in life. I hope that we've been able to respond to some of your questions, Sandra. Let's go back to the laws of leadership. And I've just been talking about law number 18, which is the law of sacrifice. And we have 3 other more laws to go before we finish. The next is the law of timing. Law number 19, the law of timing. This simply says to us that when you live, you've got to be very conscious of time. Conscious of your timing. Because wrong actions at wrong times lead to disaster. Even right actions at wrong time brings resistance. The wrong action at the right time is a mistake. However, and I'm quoting John Maxwell, the right action at the right time results in success. So you must know your timing. You must be conscious of your timing. Because like I just quoted John Maxwell, the wrong action at the wrong time leads to disaster. The right action at the wrong time brings resistance. The wrong action at the right time is a mistake. The right action at the right time results in success. Do you know the timing for everything that you do in life? Do you know the timing? Your timing in life. There are so many of us who have taken action ahead of its time. And unfortunately, it has resulted in either resistance or disaster. Getting to have the right action at the right time. Getting to do the right action at the right time. There is a time for everything and a season for every matter under the sun. There is a right timing for everything. If you get married before the right time, you won't go far in the marriage. That I can tell you for sure, because marriage comes with its own challenges. Marriage comes with its own challenges. And unless you marry at the right time to the right person, you are likely to make a flunk, or you are likely to fail when it comes to marriage. I'm just using that as an example. I do not know why it came to my head, but I'm just pointing it out. The law of timing suggests to us that our timing must be appropriate for every action when we want to take those actions. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to make an attempt to make actions or to take actions, but please note that if you take a wrong action at the right time, it may be considered a mistake, okay? But ensure that you take the right action at the right time. Sure, every wrong decision at the wrong time leads to disaster. And again, you can just look around us. You will find out what that means. You'll find out what that means. Okay? Our time is rolling fast. So let me go to the next law, law number 20, which is the law of explosive growth. The law of explosive growth. What does this law say? The law says to add growth, lead followers, but to multiply, lead leaders. You know what? It is easier to lead leaders than to lead followers. Every time it is easier to lead leaders than to lead followers. So the law of explosive growth suggests that you must learn to lead leaders. And what does this mean? It simply means that you must learn to help the leaders around you or the people around you develop to the full capacity their leadership ability. If you develop yourself alone, you can experience personal success. But if you develop people around you, you can experience explosive growth in everything that you do. One of the challenges of leaders in the third world countries, underdeveloped countries, is that once they get leadership position, they assume that they are the most intelligent people and that no one around them knows anything about anything. And you know, in that sense, their growth is very limited. The growth of their society is very limited. The reason why some societies have advanced greater and higher than other societies is because everyone is allowed to grow at his or her own pace, and everyone is allowed to speak as far as leadership is concerned. If you want your life to grow as an individual, and you want your organization or you want your family to grow in terms of strength and developing its fullest potential, then you must develop everyone around you to become a leader. You must develop everyone around you to go deep down within their souls and their spirit, to dig out the abilities of leadership that they have been created and born with. The law of explosive growth encourages that every leader must learn to develop everybody around him to grow. That's law number 20. And I could spend time on this, except that our time is fast spent, and I do not want to dwell in too long within the time that I've set out for myself. But I truly wish that every one of us, okay, helps everyone around us to grow. I truly wish for that. If you grow alone and everyone around you isn't growing, you become an island. And islands are usually separated from people. And the tendency is that when you are falling down, there won't be anybody around you to lift you up, because nobody understands what you understand. Henry Ford, the great automobile expert, okay, had that challenge. Every time anyone grew around him, from what history tells us, he tended to do what? To feel angry. He tended to more or less shove them around or keep them in their cooler, as it were. And he transferred that even to his son. That was why at one point, the Ford Automobile Company began to suffer until a time when the next leader allowed that everyone around him or were around him in the organization should grow. And at that point, the organization grew back to its strength. If you are rich, okay, in a society and everyone around you is poor, the truth is that you are poor. You are poor. So, the law of explosive growth suggests that every leader must learn to develop everyone around him or her. Learn to make them grow. Challenge them to grow. Because it is in growing, in their growth, that you also find space to grow. That's the law of explosive growth. And finally, the law of legacy. Oh dear. By this law, all right, a leader's lasting value is measured by succession. If your successor fails, you have failed. In any organization, in any family, if your successor fails, you have failed. In fact, the measure of your success is measuring your successor. Is in how well your successor fares, good or bad, when he or she succeeds you. There are heads of families who have suddenly died, and their families grew better than when they were alive. You know why? Because they developed everyone in the society to be able to stand on their own, such that when they were no longer available, the society around them, their families found space to grow. But again, there are other families where the head of the family passed on, everything about the family collapsed. And I can name thousands There was a time that the richest man in Africa, just as it is today, at so many, about 20, 21 years ago, again, the richest black man was from Nigeria. The day that he died, everything about him tended to collapse. He had so many businesses, none seems to be in existence at the moment. He had an airline company, he had hotels, he had a football club, he had a newspaper printing press, he had, just name it, just name it. But as soon as he passed on, everything about him also passed on. Why? Because he did not develop people. It is people who carry your legacy on. It is not structures that you leave behind. Structures can let you down. Structures can collapse. Structures can fail. But people will always stand and pass on your legacy from strength to strength, from person to person. When Muhammad Gandhi adopted the non-violence style of protest, many people laughed at him. But you know what? He passed that on to the next generation to the extent that men like Martin Luther King Jr. is a strong student and advocate of that training that Muhammad Gandhi did, or that philosophy that Gandhi adopted. Nelson Mandela followed suit and adopted that philosophy also. Because you leave a legacy in the life of people, not in the life of any man. Oh, sorry, not in the life of structures. That's what I mean to say. So the law of legacy, okay, suggests to us that a leader's lasting value is measured by succession. It is very important that we think of succession. It is very important that we begin to plan. No matter how young you are, you can begin to plan for your successor in whatever venture you are involved in. In fact, from day one that you embark on a venture, you must begin to think of your successor and begin to train and develop the successor, so that if suddenly you create a vacuum in your absence, the successor can fill in the gap and do even better than you have done. These are the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Now, if you didn't get the other laws, you can go back to my broadcast on Saturday, go back to next Wednesday's broadcast, and get to learn what it means to keep these 21 laws or irrefutable laws of leadership as written by John Maxwell. I've enjoyed my time with you, and I thank you for all the comments. Thank you for the questions that have come in, and thank you for your encouragement. I will stop at this point. Now, my encouragement finally will be that you practice the 21 laws of leadership. If you practice these 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and they are irrefutable because regardless of where you take them to, regardless of what society, community you apply them in, they will always yield a result for you. So my encouragement to you is that go ahead and practice this law if you want to see a remarkable difference in your life. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Asmau, for your comments. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Peter Genome. Again, thank you, others, for all the things you have said. I see your commendations coming in. So thank you, Asmau. Peter, thank you also for agreeing to even follow these laws or agreeing to listen to the laws. I'll see you next time on Saturday at 1 p.m. Continue to join me even as I do this broadcast. You're welcome. Thank you, Sandra. See you next time. Bye.